Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Back after 5 days off, and I'm back on a really busy night. Got a ton of severe weather going on across the northern Mid-Atlantic and on up to southern New England, Long Island, New York City, northern New Jersey. We're going to talk about that, and of course, we're going to talk about looks like might be Hurricane Elsa before it makes landfall. The Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York on Long Island. Good place to get emergency supplies for if we have to deal with a tropical storm or hurricane down the road. The telephone number there, 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town, omnitruevalue.com, the website, and Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs, whether you want to have your home decorated for the holidays or maybe you want to do this as part of your own business. They're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, also on Long Island. Phone number there is 631-957-5106. So give them a call to get all the information. And the website is liholidaylighting.com. So welcome back, Mr. Rayo. After a few days off, we can maybe talk about that a little later on and get right to the weather. So what do you think? We'll do the severe weather first and then do Elsa?
Yeah, well, the severe weather has certainly been quite in evidence up here in the Hudson Valley, where Renata was noting about an hour ago that the tops of the trees, at least up here, seem to be twisting in the very heavy winds that were blowing. We did get some lightning, some thunder, and some brief burst of heavy rain. The broken line of action right now seems to be south of our area and now bearing down on the immediate New York City area and parts of western Long Island. And the Met game, everybody was looking forward to that because Jacob deGrom is pitching tonight. It looks like the Met game is going to be, it is in delay, and it's going to be in delay for a little while longer while we wait for this area, this line of heavy, severe, strong to severe weather passes on through. We're moving from northwest to southeast across, again, the immediate tri-state area, Joe.
All right, so I just have I just pulled up the full screen radar, so I'm going to bring up, let's bring up OKX and start there with over on Upton. That's probably, I think, that the in terms of the thunderstorms that we've had chances for thunderstorms in the last couple of months, this has got to be the most impressive line. It actually, for Long Islanders, is like I always get the question from folks on the thunderstorm fans on Long Island that are get frustrated because in the springtime they almost always fall apart, especially if you're east of Suffolk County. But today, whenever you get these systems that come down in a northwest flow like this, there's you don't get that marine influence. And actually, now that we are at the 6th of July, and the ocean water temperatures have already jumped up into the low 70s along most of the South Shore, and even warmer as you go south and east, the marine influence is really getting minimized here. So these storms held together quite well. I used the FB3 model today again. I thought that it handled the last couple of thunderstorm threats pretty well, and it handled this one very well. Really kind of lined up the storms almost. I mean, none of the short range models ever gets it exactly correct, but this one was fairly close with the magnitude and the timing.
Yeah, and the timing I gave for the Hudson Valley and for the immediate New York area, and this was hours ago. I said, well, it looks like the best shot is going to be between 5 and 8 o'clock. And sure enough, no sooner had we gotten to 10 or 15 minutes after 5 o'clock locally here, things started to go awry very quickly. And I said, well, right on schedule. And that line is now, as you can see on the screen, pushing just offshore off the south coast of Long Island for Nassau County and western Suffolk. And for the folks who live out, let's say, in the Forks area, the Hamptons, that area, they're getting hammered right about now. And it looks like the main activity is going to be out over the ocean within the next 30 minutes. And and things should be diminishing quickly thereafter.
I just switched over to the Fort Dix radar so we can see the western edge. There are some very strong storms cutting east-west across New Jersey. If you cut them, the state almost in half, they look like they're set up right along Route 195, just north of Route 195, running from Sandy Hook all the way west to just north of Trenton. There are a couple of really vicious-looking cells here. We have two. Well, it's at the start of the loop, it looked like we had about 5 severe thunderstorm warnings. Looks like we're down to 2 now in New Jersey. And there's also the one remaining severe thunderstorm warning up in Suffolk County on Long Island. But this area, as you said, Joe, moving fairly quickly to the southeast. There are a couple of renegade cells in eastern Pennsylvania, south of Scranton, behind it. Eventually, all of this is just going to start falling apart. But in terms of the timing of these storms, with regards to the time of day, I think this is probably the first time that we actually had the line of storms approach the coast just as we came off the peak daytime heating. You know, we've been kind of getting into situations where areas west and north have been getting the storms with the maximum daytime heating, and then by the time they get down to the coast, it's already past sunset, or the marine layer has taken over. But this one really did time out rather precisely for the areas for the areas right along the coast, and also down from northern and central New Jersey.
And I should point out that people wondering, what triggered this. This was actually triggered by an upper level trough that is currently draped almost right across the tri-state area, and it's going to remain pretty much in that same vicinity, and may be a little bit further to the south tomorrow. But we are expecting again tomorrow the possibility again of some local, thunderstorms, strong thunderstorms. Again, once everything gets heated up later in the day, there is an actual cold front that is going to try to work its way down from the north, but it's going to be held up and moving through here because it's going to kind of buckle or ripple before it fully gets through, and really won't be through our area, at least through the almost the end of the week. So we're going to continue to remain in a rather humid, and when I talk about humid, I'm talking about like dew points at or above 70, humid airflow. And that threat of shower and thunderstorm activity remains with us probably right on through again the end of the week. And of course, the end of the week, all eyes will be looking southward at a tropical system, and that, of course, is Elsa.
Which we're going to now take a look at. And I'm going to bring up the satellite loop. Before I do that, I just want to acknowledge thank yous to Robert Russo tonight, Anthony Orr, and Chuck Cardillo, all early Super Chat hits. They hit Super Chat before the show began. So thank you guys very much for doing that. Joe and I appreciate it greatly. Now, as far as Elsa is concerned, to me, this has actually been a rather remarkable system from the get-go, starting out at 9 north and 45 west, becoming a hurricane as it approached and moved through the islands. And then in an area where normally the systems weaken, it sort of held itself together in spite of the fact that it was moving at an absolutely exceptional speed of 30 miles an hour, which I don't remember seeing a tropical system in the low latitudes moving that quickly. Yeah, when they get up into the mid latitudes and go further north, that's a different story. But in terms of the deep tropics, yet it somehow held together, even though by moving so fast, you could have had the low level center separating from the mid level center. It indeed had that sort of tilted look to it, but it just kind of hung on. And I found it interesting this morning. Overnight and this morning, one of the things I noticed as it was crossing Cuba, you started to get, whenever you get that feathering, when you look at a satellite loop, and I'll bring it up now, but it's not going to show it from earlier today, but whenever you start to see the feathering of clouds on the periphery, that's usually a pretty good indicator that something's trying to get going. And indeed, as we went through the morning hours and into the afternoon, and I'm noticing now, Joe, that it looks like all day long, for most of the day, the center, the western side of this storm had almost nothing going on, but during the late afternoon and evening, it's really becoming pretty obvious now that you're getting that the center has now gotten tucked in over underneath an expanding area of convection just to the west of the Florida coast. I think this is probably going to get to minimal hurricane strength very shortly, and before it makes landfall in the Florida coastal bend.
Right, it's already up to 70 miles per hour near the center, the circulation. Not the biggest in the world, but as you just mentioned, Joe, it is just below Cat 1 hurricane strength, and it probably will indeed in the coming hours. We may even see, depending upon the feelings of the forecaster on duty at the Hurricane Center, he may decide to jump it up to a hurricane during the intermediate advisory. If not, certainly I think by 11 o'clock tonight, we will be looking at Hurricane Elsa once again. She was a hurricane at one time. She diminished to a tropical storm, but as you said, she is beginning to rev up now. And the question now is the precise track of the storm. The fact is that it's going to be moving back over land for tomorrow on into Thursday, which will weaken the system, and then it may try to once again strengthen somewhat as it gets its feet wet out over the ocean sometime later on Thursday near the Virginia Capes, and then it'll sideswipe our area. And I'd be interested to know how you feel that Elsa is going to impact us. For me, from all of the storms that I could remember, all of the tropical systems that I can remember in my memory that have skirted the coast and passed off to our south and east, these things usually are at their worst to the south and to the east of the storm track. We, of course, will be north and west of the track. And while I'm not saying we're not going to see anything from it, I certainly do not think that we're going to see anything of a significant nature. In other words, I don't think we're going to be seeing, flooding rains and god-awful high winds here. It will be, I think, in my opinion, more of just a regular type of rainstorm. It'll be interesting to say, hey, we've got a tropical system maybe a couple 100 miles or less off the coast. But again, from all of the other systems that I've seen over the years, the worst of this usually is to the east of the storm track, and we're not going to be in that zone.
I used Isaias from last year as a comparison. It's totally different. And I mean, just basically in terms of the upper air, in terms of the actual track, and I'll get into it a little bit when we get the model up there. Take a look at the radar right off the Florida west coast there for the first time in the last 3 or 4 hours. Certainly for the first time today, you have an almost circular look, and you actually have convection now going on the west side. Almost looks like a little tiny eye might be trying to form there off the coast. It could just be a little radar noise, but it does look like the center is at least trying to close off as it moves northwestward. There's a renegade band up in northern Florida. You see it here moving northwestward, and an east-west band of downpours and a few heavy thunderstorms in southern Georgia, back over into Alabama, and those are moving northwest. I'm not in it. I'm up in the northeast corner, so I'm just still, nice and dry, and it was a lovely day here, Joe. Another day where I have not. It is the 6th of July. I have still not seen a 90-degree day here. It only got to 83 today. This morning, my low this morning was 59. Just
Wow.
to make everybody feel better if you're suffering in the humidity. But back to just with Elsa, because it's tracking off the west coast of Florida, the strongest winds are right along the immediate coast and just inland and running up and down. And we're also seeing rain that's extending further inland, almost to the other side of the state at this point. So in terms of a track, the fact that the center of the storm is just offshore is allowing a lot of this tropical moisture and rain to kind of move throughout the entire state from south to north. But obviously the heaviest rains are occurring now from right around Fort Myers. Looks like they're just about to get into Port Charlotte and eventually moving up further north into the Tampa Bay region later on tonight. I'm going to pull up the hazards map. Let's see if I can get. I had it up there here before, but I must have accidentally erased it. So now I will reopen the window here. Let's see if we can take a look at some observations along the Florida West Coast. And while the map is loading, thanks those of you who've hit the like button, most appreciated as always. Thank you very much. If you could take the like number a little higher, it would be appreciated even more. So, but thank you nonetheless. All right, let me just get this down into Florida, and we'll take a look at
Earl Warren and Craig Carlberg on the and also Anthony Orr, all pointing out the latest or the intermediate advisory, all indicating that Elsa has indeed regained hurricane status, Joe.
Okay.
Southwest of Tampa Bay.
Then the radar was right, showing looked like an eye closing off. I'm just looking at some of these observations here. Ding Darling, whatever that is. Ding Darling is east at 15, gusting to 37. It's right along the coast, somewhere not too far from Cape Coral. We've got Venice Municipal Airport in reporting an east wind at 28, gusting to 41. Punta Gorda, Charlotte County is east-southeast at 15, gusting to 25, but they're a little ways inland there. So nothing spectacular. I did see gusts this morning in the Florida Keys at Key West, almost over to 60 miles an hour. So the winds were certainly cranking when the system went by there. It looks like we got a few gusts to gale force along the coast, but the strongest winds must be just barely offshore. And I think as this winds up going further north, you're going to see those stronger winds start to be reported by the coastal town. Sarasota is 24 from the east, gusting to 31. We've got a 36-mile-an-hour wind gust heading up now over toward Tampa Bay. So Albert Whitted Airport is east at 26, gusting to 36. And that pretty much covers it there as far as some of the observations that we're seeing. Let's see what NHC is doing with this, and we'll bring up the latest advisory. So regains hurricane status, 996 millibars, 26.6 north, 83.1 west. 996 is usually a little on the high side. Usually you get the storms that become hurricanes that are in the 980s, but it's a smallish system. The gradient's pretty tight. So it sort of makes sense. It's certainly the recon that I saw earlier was already reporting winds at flight level between 64 and 83 knots. So this should be no surprise to anybody. It's 100 miles southwest of Tampa, Florida, and moving to the north. I think landfall is probably going to be north of Tampa Bay.
And if you are a follower of the old-time note that you learn something new every day. As soon as Joe mentioned Ding Darling, I went online and checked it out on Wikipedia. And Joe, it is the JN Ding. Ding is in quote marks. Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge, which was created to safeguard and enhance the pristine wildlife habitat of Sanibel Island, and it is named after a political cartoonist with an eye toward conservation. J. Norwood Ding Darling was instrumental in the effort to block the sale of a parcel of environmentally valuable land to developers on Sanibel Island. At Darling's urging, President Harry Truman signed an executive order which created the Sanibel Island National Wildlife Refuge in 1945, and we owe it all to Mr. Ding Darling. The refuge was renamed in 1967 in honor of Mr. Darling, and that's where we get the name Ding Darling from. It's an
All
odd
right.
name, but there is a history to it, and there you go.
All right. And I actually have been to Sanibel Island, and it's if you haven't, if you've never been, it is truly a gorgeous place. They did a 10-day vacation there years ago. It was absolutely spectacular. New recon is on its way, so we're not going to probably have anything from this from the during the show tonight. But I'm going to go back to the previous mission just to show you what was going on this afternoon. And uh, the wind field, if you look at the winds and the wind barbs here in the purple on the east side, the first clue came on the 2 o'clock advisory when the Hurricane Center did sort of a, you know, uh, fast update to acknowledge the fact that this thing was top winds were 70 miles an hour and could become a hurricane. You'll notice that the pressure actually from earlier today, when it was sitting around 1,006, 1,007 millibars, had dropped down to 1,000 millibars relatively quickly. When the 2 o'clock advisory came out, they hadn't sampled the east side yet. And of course, subsequently, in time for the 5 o'clock advisory, and you can see what the issue is, the way the plane found the winds here east of the center in the purple, also northeast of the center. That's all 64 to 83 knots at flight level. And the reds are 60 to 64 knots. So it was just, I think probably the one thing that would have held them back, it probably would have held me back in terms of making it a hurricane based on this, was the fact that the pressure was still kind of high, and also the fact that at this point in the afternoon, this was at 2:56 was the last odd that came on this, 2:56 p.m. Eastern time, that you'll notice on the west and southwest side of the center, there was very little, if anything, going on. So you had a completely open west and southwest side. But now, of course, going back to the satellite, and you see how it's all gotten tucked in, and you continue to see this expanding area of convection on the east side and also now on the west side. So yeah, that they made it a hurricane, I think does make sense. And I got a few other things I want to bring up here. Let's just see where. Oh, there's that hazards map. Let me close it, and let's go to the Hurricane Center. This is from the 5 o'clock technical discussion in terms of the plots. At 8 o'clock, as we said, 26.6, 83.1, top winds at 75, north at 14 is the movement. They didn't change the actual forecast here, but they've got those hurricane warnings up from Bonita Beach on northward through the coastal bend or the Big Bend of Florida, and then moving inland sometime tomorrow morning. Then weakening as a tropical storm, maybe weakens down even to a tropical depression by Thursday afternoon on their forecast in northwest of Wilmington, North Carolina, comes out offshore on their forecast somewhere in southernmost Chesapeake Bay, lower Delmarva as a tropical storm, and passes just southeast of Long Island. This track that they have kind of sits, Joe, right? If you look at the spaghetti plots, if you want to call them that, they're all very, very tightly clustered. They're all inside the 40-70 benchmark. I think the one thing you have to look for, at least for the immediate coast, not inland areas, but for the immediate coast, New Jersey, Long Island, southeastern New England, I think there's a chance that you could wind up getting into some solid rain for at least a few hours out of this. But as you said earlier, and I agree with you, think back to last year with Isaias, with the 6 hours of the absolutely vicious south wind with gusts to 75, 80 miles an hour. That's not going to happen with this.
No, well, it's Itzia for one thing. The track of Itzia relative to the immediate New York City area, those of you who can remember back less than a year ago, was pretty much along the Pennsylvania-New Jersey borderline. In other words, Itzia was off to the west of us. And also, Joe, the thing that I remember vividly before Itzia impacted our area was that on the FGen maps, both at 850 and also 700, there was a solid band of Omega that was heading right toward us, coming up straight up from the south. And we were going to be in that band. It was a pretty rapid movement, too. We were going to be in that band for 3 or 4 hours, but I knew that was going to be the equivalent of, if you want to take this analogy to heart, kind of like the old days with Muhammad Ali, the rope-a-dope, if you will, with the boxer just hanging on the ropes, and and George Foreman more or less hammering away, bang, 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 bang. That's what Itzaia did to us between about noontime and 3 o'clock in the afternoon hours, because the track again was to the west. And as I just noted about 5 or 10 minutes ago, these systems, these tropical systems, the worst part of it is in areas to the east of the storm track. And that's exactly where we were. We were to the east of Itzaia last year. That's why we got the worst of it. This system is going to track to our south and east. In fact, this kind of reminds me of Ana. Not Ana this year. We already had an Ana, but 6 years ago in 2015, there was a tropical cyclone, Ana, which pretty much went from the coastline of Virginia, south and east of New York, to about Cape Cod. And that system brought us a bit of rain, a little bit of wind, but not all that much to write home about. So that's just one example of many that we've seen over the years. Look, when you and I were in our last year at FiOS 1 in 2019, we had a far more prolific, a far stronger, a far more dangerous storm, Hurricane Dorian. Dorian passed again along that track, basically from the coastline of the Carolinas, south and east of our area, off toward Cape Cod, made landfall, for goodness sake, in Nova Scotia. We got a little bit of rain, some gusty winds, but that was about it. The worst of the storm stayed out over the ocean. So that's why I think that regardless of what happens in the next 24 to 48 hours, in terms of what we may see with this tropical system, I think that Elsa, for the most part, is going to join in with all those other storms and pass us by with, again, a little bit of notoriety, but not really anything to get totally out of hand here.
Right. The only way that it could wind up being a little bit more in terms of activity is if the track winds up being a little bit further west, maybe right along the immediate,
absolutely.
Virtually right on the coast, or if it were to go to just west of, if it would go to New York, right along the immediate coast and up New York Harbor.
Well, we could look.
Then it would be a different story.
30 years ago, we had in late August, we had Bob, which made landfall barely, but it made landfall on the east end of Long Island. And if I remember correctly, the New York metropolitan area did get some squally rains and winds out of that. But again, as you point out, Joe, for that to happen, for this to replicate what Bob gave to us, it would have to take a track closer to the coastline. And really, it more or less, it's going to have to build up after it gets its feet wet again, because, as you pointed out a few moments ago, the Hurricane Center has it actually diminishing down to a depression before it starts revving up again to a storm and moving off the coast early Friday morning.
Right.
A lot of these other storms, more or less stayed just offshore, tracked across the Outer Banks or the Virginia Capes, and stayed out over the ocean and retained a lot of their energy. This system, once it goes inland, it's going to get knocked down a bit. And for all of you who want.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No. Well, I said for all of you who want to see a significant outbreak of wind and rain out of this, you're going to have to hope that when the storm moves back out over the waters first thing on Friday morning, that it revs up really fast. I don't think it's going to rev up really. It'll rev up, but I don't think it's going to rev up to the point where, it's going to cause any kind of major problems with the weather locally. Again, I'm not saying it's going to miss us. I'm not saying we're not going to see anything out of it. What I'm saying is that what we're going to see here in the tri-state area will be a bit of rain, maybe a few gusts of wind, but certainly, as you pointed out, Joe, just a few moments ago, nothing like what we went through last year with Itzaia, with, trees coming down, power lines coming down. I lost power for like 3 days in the aftermath of Itzaia. I'm not anticipating. I'll be very surprised if that were to happen with Elsa at the end of the week.
Well, as far as rainfall is concerned with this, and this is WPC's forecast map. I really have no reason to argue with it. The yellow areas, 4 to 6 inches of rain. The darker green of 2 to 4. You can see how they kind of run into southeast Georgia, almost the northern fringe of it to about Augusta, all well south and east of at the big Atlanta. The 2 to 4 inch rain border goes into southwestern North Carolina. The lighter green is 1 to 2 inches. And Speed Gamer, you're asking about impact from the Mid Atlantic states with this. I really also for the Mid Atlantic, I don't see much anything unusual coming out of this. And the reason why, and we made this reference to Isaias from last year. I want to bring up the upper air because this is really the driver in when you get these systems that come up the coast. In order for them to have the kind of impact that we saw last year, and we've seen also want to go further back to Hurricane David back in '79. It kind of was the same thing that you get a system that runs inland and sort of maintains its identity. You got to have a sharp upper trough, and you want that upper trough to be negatively tilted. And if I recall, with last year, that's exactly what we had with Isaias as it moved up the coast. And as a result, we wound up getting an inland track. So you get a low that moves up just inland of the coast. If it maintains a strong identity and it's getting juiced up by an negatively tilted upper air trough, which is what we had with that storm last year, you wind up with an extremely tight pressure gradient. And of course, if you're east of the center, you're going to get clobbered with strong southerly winds. It was moving like a rocket ship, as I remember too, at
It was.
some
Yep.
ridiculous rate of speed, 50 or 60 miles an hour. So that the momentum of the storm moving northward, you have to add that to the wind potential on the eastern side, and you sort of subtract it on the western side. So that's how that played out. But the upper trough structure here is different this time around. If you take a look, I just got the NAM model, for example. You don't have there's a trough that's coming down, trying to amplify here, but it's not quite amplified enough. You see it there. It sort of has this kind of gentle look to it in terms of the bending of the flow. You want to have like one of those sharp V-shaped troughs that's swung around. In this instance, it's kind of gently moving along from west to east, and that little blue spot that you see in North Carolina, that's the upper air reflection of Elsa. And of course, you see the flow here is running southwest to northeast. So Elsa's just going to just sort of skedaddle along here offshore. In fact, the NAM even loses it, that feature. Just it goes from being a little closed upper low there, or certainly an identifiable feature as it's in North Carolina, and then it just kind of gets ejected as that trough just gently moves from west to east. So you don't really have the upper air set up to create something that's going to be, I'll use the word extraordinary. The one model, and I would be very cautious with this with respect to the European, if only because of the fact that the European has really mishandled this storm from the get-go. If you recall, late last week, it just diminished it to nothing. So according to the European, it was never supposed to get anywhere and was never going to make it out of the Eastern Caribbean. Well, this is today's European run, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits, and I looped it. This is the further. It's interesting, Joe. The global models all seem to be to the left of the hurricane tracking models, which we showed earlier, but the European is the furthest left of the bunch and maintains the most identifiable feature with the low. But even here, I mean, this would be a soaking rain. Maybe you get fringe gales over coastal New Jersey and for Long Island for a few hours, and then it would be done. I still don't think that this is going to wind up being a huge problem, even if the European were to verify exactly as advertised.
Yeah, and you're right. The European showing more of a robust look to the storm as opposed to the other models like the GFS and even the NAM. And the one thing I was surprised at, Joe, is the lack of any Omega or any F-Gen that the NAM and the GFS was indicating for this system. I would have at least expected something east of the storm track, but there really isn't all that much that's being advertised by those guidance models for Elsa. And you just noted here, of all the models, the European seems to be the most robust, but the European really hasn't been handling this storm from the get-go. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of days.
Yeah, here's the upper air on the European. Now, the European has maybe a little bit more of a definable short wave that moves through the Great Lakes, and you see the identifiable feature that is Elsa sitting in Delaware Bay Friday morning, and that's why the model did what it did at the surface. And of course, it's gone later Friday into Friday evening. It's long gone, and then we go into the weekend, and hopefully the weekend will be okay. But the bottom line is, as we've just been kind of saying, if you're looking for a repeat performance from last year, I really don't see it happening.
In fact, I'm looking at this on the WSI version of the.
By the way, you have sharing capability, so if you wanted to share something, just
all right. Yeah. I think I ought to show this because this is interesting to me.
Okay, hang on, and go ahead. You can go ahead and share.
Yeah. You could see for yourself now on the screen. So here we have 12Z Friday, and here is Elsa. This you can't get any more obvious where the center of the storm is, according to the European. Here, it's sitting right on Cape May, New Jersey. And now let's take a look 6 hours later. This is 12Z. This is 8 a.m. on Friday morning. And here it is now on 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. Take a look, Joe. There's the center of the storm. Is that just, that's just south of what? Cape Lookout? Jones Beach?
Yeah.
That's where the storm, is placed by the European. And then if we go 6 hours more, by 8 o'clock Friday night, the storm goes basically from here, just south of like Jones Beach, cuts across. Well, this is kind of like what Bob did in some ways. And look at the rapid movement. In 6 hours, it goes from here, offshore, south of Jones Beach. It goes to just south of Boston in 6 hours. So this is a very rapid moving, but again, a noticeably further west track as compared to the other models, and also as compared to what the folks at the National Hurricane Center are suggesting. So this will be interesting to see if this actually does, come closer to the truth, according to the European, or whether or not the storm actually stays further away off to the east. But if this track were to verify, yeah, we would certainly pick up, especially right along the Jersey shore and along the coastal areas of Long Island. It certainly would be quite a rain and windstorm for at least a few hours.
Right.
But notice that we'll also you don't have to go too far north and west of the track to get a lot less.
Yeah, there'll be a sharp cutoff. And as always with these systems, as they gain latitude, they start to look less and less tropical and more and more extra tropical, where the rain shield shifts to the west of the center rather than to the east. And then on the east side, you don't get much rain, but you wind up getting more in the way of wind. So that's something else that we'll probably have to figure out as it heads up the coast. But this is the new Europe. This is the intermediate run of the European, correct?
Right. This is the 18Z run, which you just saw was the primary run based on 12Z. This is the 18Z. As you can see now, 7 a.m. Still the same position, more or less, near Cape May. And then as we get to 2 o'clock on Friday, again, basically it's the same system. The one thing I notice is that the intensity is not quite as it's not quite as robust as it was on the 12Z. And then at 78 hours, again, so it's basically the same kind of track. It takes it again from Cape May at 8 a.m. on Friday morning to just south of Jones Beach at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then up to just south of Boston by 8 p.m. on Friday. And a track that, again, would bring, some rain and some wind to our area. But, again, this is not quite as potent as what was indicated on the primary run at 12Z. So it's interesting.
All right. One of the things that I brought up a couple of times over the last few weeks is the fact that we keep getting this troughing in the eastern part of the United States. It's been very persistent. That flow out of Canada remains very active. And here, this is an example. Now, we're not dealing, I'm given the time of year, because we're still, the 6th of July. A month from now, we probably would be dealing with something perhaps a bit more in the way of strength. But I again want to just bring up the fact that we keep getting these persistent troughs that drop into the eastern part of the United States. And if we get another tropical system in the wrong place at the wrong time, as you get one of these troughs to drop into the eastern part of the U.S., you're going to have some issues. Now, I'm looking long range on the GFS, where we're going to pull this troughing out to an extent Sunday and early next week. There's a big upper high that starts to build off the southeast coast of the United States. There's a big upper high that builds in Southern California and in Nevada, and in between you have an upper low there in eastern Iowa with a trough in the middle of the country. So this would be, a little bit of a break. The flow from Canada temporarily gets cut off, but guess what? We start to run down through the middle of the month, and it's back again. There's general troughing in the eastern part of the U.S. It's nothing particularly strong, but those systems are there, and I think we have to acknowledge the fact that if we're going to continue to see these systems drop into the east like this, and we see the tropics begin to rev up when we get, because I'm thinking we'll probably get a bit of a break for a week or so, and then a week or two, and then maybe it revs up as we get toward the end of the month. So getting toward the end of July and certainly going into August, it's going to be very interesting to see if we wind up holding this overall pattern that we were in, where troughs like to be in the eastern part of the United States.
Yes, agreed. I'm just looking here at some of the comments on the chat board, and Joyce Mack writes, "It's visiting the no snow bus in that map, Joe R." I'm not sure exactly what she's making reference to there.
Well, it's all the heat.
No snow bus.
It's all the heat that we've had. Well, you've had.
Yeah, and I made a comment. Somebody, earlier today, I said, it's a good thing it didn't snow today. Can you imagine trying to shovel snow in this heat?
Yeah. Yes, Joseph.
Yes.
I'm going to bring up, I got Tampa Bay's radar here. It's really funny because the old radars, the GIF images, are showing up, which is nice. And I know how to rewrite the key, rewrite the code in order to get the map to come up. But here's the Tampa Bay radar, and you can clearly see what I showed you earlier on that national shot zoomed in. The center closing off, convection now on the west side, and what looks like maybe the appearance of a little bit of an eye there off the coast. It is going to pass to the west of Tampa Bay and then start to turn northeast. So right up, I don't have any town names up in this part of Florida, but north and west of Tampa Bay, you get up toward the Swanee River and points northward. There's probably where your landfall is going to be, somewhere in there, right in the coastal bend, or what they call the Florida
so-called
Big Bend.
the Big Bend. I was just going to say the Big Bend.
The Big Bend, yes, correct.
Yes.
I'll jump one more radar. Let's see if we can go a little bit further to the north. They also, by the way, not to forget, tornado watches are up. Also, we should go look at WPC's forecast. And here you can see up north and west of Tampa's range is some of the heavier downpours and squalls that are moving up to the northwest toward Tallahassee. and up into southwestern Georgia, and also on up into Alabama. WPC's rainfall forecast, by the way, for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, you can see the lighter purple is 1.5 inches, and that runs into southeastern Virginia, up into the Delmarva Peninsula through New Jersey, and then you've got some areas of 2 to 3 inches plus. Now, some of this is going to be due to convection that's going to occur tomorrow and again on Thursday as that cold front swings eastward. So when you look at what's being forecast, say, for upstate New York and Vermont and Massachusetts into New Hampshire, that's not going to be from the tropical system. That's not going to be from Elsa. That's going to be from the upper troughs that are moving through, and then finally the last cold front that goes by. Also, some big rains in the Ohio, from Ohio on west across Illinois into Iowa, of several inches or more, down along the coastal bend of Texas, because there's a lot of tropical moisture in the Gulf of Mexico that's lined up right along the Texas coast. So there's a little band there of 10-inch plus rains being forecast from Corpus Christi northeastward in that brown and yellow area. That's 7 to 15 inches in that zone. The Elsa rains from WPC, that's all in that bright red and some orange there, a few areas showing 5 inches or more. So that kind of matches up with the forecast that I showed you before. And let's bring up SPC's map, because we do have severe weather risk. Obviously, with this, tornadoes are going to be a possibility. There's a working tornado watch that covers much of southern and central Florida. And that is trying to see if it's posted here in terms of the expiration time. That was issued earlier today. It's valid until 10 o'clock this evening. I got to think there'll probably be another one that'll go up at some point. We also have a slight risk in a working severe thunderstorm watch from northern Iowa into central Wisconsin. Slight risk also up in parts of Montana, so a fairly busy night. Look for this for tomorrow. They just updated this, Joe, and I've been arguing since yesterday that they had the boundary zone too far north, and they must have obviously heard me. So they now have the marginal risk down almost about to where they had it originally for today before they made it even further south. But they got marginal risk down now to southern New Jersey, all of Long Island, the lower, middle, and upper Hudson Valley, going north of I-90, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, all of PA, most of Ohio, northeastern Indiana, and southeastern Michigan. I think that's fair. And then from the impacts of Elsa, you've got a marginal risk across northern Florida, draw a line across Florida, north of Tampa, St. Pete to the east coast. From there north, southeastern Georgia, southernmost South Carolina. And I'm thinking for day 3, maybe they push that a little bit up into eastern North Carolina for a short time. Yeah, for day 3. So this is Thursday into Friday. Slight risk southeastern Virginia, eastern North Carolina, eastern South Carolina. I think, and that all pretty much makes sense. If you look at where the risk area is, where they have the edge of the marginal risk, that's you can draw. That's the track of Elsa, right, running right along the edge of that marginal risk line.
Right. That's probably where she's going to go. And again, saw a couple of comments on the chat board relative to the European track, indicating reminds them of Bob. And Bob, it's hard for me to believe it's been 30 years, but indeed this is the 30th anniversary of Bob. In order for that to happen, you have to think that the Europeans' idea of a further west track would indeed take it on a Bob-like scenario, a Bob-like episode. So it'll be interesting to see after, once it moves well inland over the Carolinas, that's going to be when the real test is going to be as to where the storm goes from there, whether or not the other models decide to take it more to the west or whether or not they try to kick it more to the east. But whatever we see from this will probably be Thursday night late into the early part of Friday.
Chuck Cardillo, yes, Swanee River by Ed Norton. we always have to acknowledge whenever they use Swanee River in the advisory. Just to be clear on this, I'm going through the hurricane warning, because a lot of times when they do these warnings and they pick spots, if you don't live there, because they don't always use obvious markers,
Right.
bigger cities. So just to be clear, the warning is in effect from Edgemont Key to the Steinhatchee River in Florida. Now, I have no idea where either of those two places are, but I'm figuring it's up the West Coast, north of Bonita Beach, to and points northward. So anyhow, you'll just have to look it up on a map, because I don't have even the maps that I'm using with um, some of the stuff that we put on the air, the hazards map. They don't even have the geography on there, the towns labeled. So again, it's from Edgemont Key to the Steinhatchee River in Florida. Tropical storm warnings for the dry Tortugas from the west coast of Florida, from Flamingo to south of Edgemont Key, west coast of Florida, north of the Steinhatchee River to the Oklanoche. I, I don't know how. I actually thought I pronounced this right earlier today, and now I forgot how I said it. The Ochlockonee River. There it goes, Ochlockonee River. And also from the coast of Georgia, from the mouth of the St. Mary's River to at Altamaha Sound, or Altahama Sound. And also tropical storm. I should quit while I'm behind. A tropical storm watch in effect north of the Altahama Sound in Georgia to the South Santee River, two two syllables. The South Santee River in South Carolina, at least for now. And I would expect to see those tropical storm watches probably extended into coastal North Carolina over time. So there.
You're just rolling off your tongue, Joe.
Oh, good Lord. Rolled off the tongue and right onto the floor. Exactly. Junior, all is well. Glad you're on watching the show tonight. Glad that you're here. Yeah, everything's good. And the 4th of July weekend, Joe, went very well. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I expected to have some hot weather up here, but I have yet to get anywhere. I think the hottest I got on one day was 88. That's been the highest temperature I've seen here. And today, 83 after a low of 59.
Unbelievable. I must have had up here at least 8 or 9 days already at or above 90, and a couple of days like 96, 98. So it's amazing that you have managed to miss the hot boat, so to speak. I'm sure you'll get something.
And I haven't had, the dew points. This weekend in particular, Saturday morning when it was down in the low 50s, and the dew points were during the day were in the mid 50s. It was great. It was very, very nice, extremely comfortable. No issues. I went out this morning. I actually could have even used a little sweatshirt because it was a little bit on. There was a bit of a southern chill.
Oh, dear me. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Do we have anything in terms of Briller Jeopardy today?
No, Scott's with his mom on vacation, and we wish his mom well. She's still very slowly recovering, but she's doing her physical therapy, which is very, very important. And she'll be back on skates very, very soon. There's a tournament coming up. They have the race on the boardwalk. She wants to make sure she enters because she wins that race practically every year, so she doesn't want to miss out for this year.
I'm picturing Scott helping his mother, on skates, and somebody off to one side saying, "Steady now, steady."
Yes.
Steady. If you're a Honeymooners fan, you know what I'm making
exactly.
to.
Oh, so one thing I wanted to bring up, because I was reading, reading the discussions of the Hurricane Center. I've been following Elsa all day, and when I watching the development, and then of course when the 2 o'clock advisory came out, there was a sense of panic in maybe I'm overstating it to say panic, but there was a sense of we got to get this information out. So there was a special advisory, and all in all, I'm reading the discussion from the forecaster at 5 o'clock. I got this feeling that that it was, let me write this because I have to catch a bus in about 5 minutes and I need to get out the door. I mean, it was just
Yeah, I noticed.
Did you notice the
I
tone
noticed
of it though? The tone was very. I got to get this. It's got to go out at 4:50 because the bus comes at 4:55.
It was a rather short, discussion, because usually it's broken into like three separate segments telling you about what has happened so far, and then they talk about the hurricane strength, and then they talk about the path. And yeah, you're right. There's two relatively short paragraphs followed by the key message.
Right, and then the path of the comments about the forecast going forward. No changes.
Right.
You've had 15,000 models that have come in during the day, and all that you can say is no changes from the previous forecast.
Exactly.
I got such a kick out of that. It's just
how do you pronounce the guy's name? Is it Patch?
Posh.
Pash?
Posh.
Tish Tosh Posh.
All right, I got the off Tropical Tidbits. By the way, anybody get on Tropical Tidbits and check out Levi Cowan's videos that he puts up when we get these tropical systems, because they're really they're very good and very educational. But here's from his recon page. So the plane actually looks like it closed off a center somewhere, let's say 26.7 and about 83.4. The plane flew into the southeastern quad, looking at winds. There's a couple of wind barbs there in the 50 to 55 knot range, but now it's coming up. So we're going into the area that earlier today had those 64 to 83 knots. So it'll be pretty interesting. It'll be interesting to see, given what we're seeing on the satellite, on the radar. I would think you're going to see a repeat performance of that. But you'll notice, by the way, so 83 and a half, 82 and a half, Tampa Bay's in 82 and a half. The center's out closer to 83 and a half. I mean, that's a good 60 miles offshore. So it's no surprise that the winds along the immediate coast, you're getting some gust to gale force, but you're not getting, at least not yet, you're not getting those stronger sustained winds coming into the coast at the moment.
Right. But, and it's going to be out over the water for, I would suppose for another, Joe, 8 hours or so before it makes landfall in the Big Bend area.
It might go all night into tomorrow morning. I would say 8 to 10, 8 to 12 hours before landfall. And
the fact is that we're unaware. I mean, unless there's an unusually warm warm boundary area of water, as we sometimes see along the immediate Gulf Coast, like off of Louisiana, let's say, and the storm interacts with that, and suddenly it intensifies tremendously over a short interval of time. Unless we have something like that, it should more or less stay pretty much at 75 mile per hour. I don't see any reason to think that it's going to, between now and tomorrow morning, suddenly jump up to like 90 mile per hour or something like that. It's going to be pretty.
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of a stretch given its proximity to land and some other issues that are going on. But I'm just a little bit concerned looking at the fact that the whole western side of the storm has now filled in and closed off, and the radar still. I'm sorry, and the satellite on the loop, still, the center is now completely tucked in under all that convection. look, it's not impossible that it could get to pick up, the wind could pick up a little bit more before it makes landfall.
Yeah.
I know they've been talking about shear, but I think they've really overstated it for days. And yeah, there's probably some moderate shear of about 20 knots, but I think back to Hurricane Michael a couple of years ago, where they kept saying how there was this 20 knots of moderate shear. It wasn't going to strengthen much beyond a minimal hurricane. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to get, that was a totally different circumstance. But, sometimes there are other things going on. One of the things that the Hurricane Center big boys will have said over the years, that the track forecasts have gotten very, very good. I mean, the margin, the error in miles inside 48 hours is down to like less than 20 miles in terms of the forecast. But they will tell you that as far as the intensity is concerned, that's still a challenge sometimes in trying to figure out what these storms are going to do.
Well, it's always been, and I think it always will be, trying to determine the intensity. The intensity forecasts are always rough, but yeah, they have gotten much better in recent years with the tracks, especially inside of 48 or 72 hours. So, but the intensity, still there's some surprises sometimes. So we'll see later tonight or tomorrow morning whether or not we might have a surprise from Elsa.
Indeed. So I guess we're back to normal with regards to our shows this week, right? Correct?
Yes, we are. We're back to normal, and even though I have a library talk next week, that library talk should not interfere with our regular schedule. So we're pretty well on target for the rest of the week.
All right. Well, that works for me. That's great. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find something here in the meantime. Anyway, my 4th of July was great. The weekend was great. I had my grandsons here. I had my daughter and my son-in-law here for a couple of days. We had a lot of fun. I know you had family stuff going on, and you had a lot of fun. So Joe and I hope that all of you had a lot of fun during the 4th of July holiday weekend. Chris B., thank you, by the way, for the nice compliment. Chris said earlier, I find it amazing these guys from up north. Well, I'm not exactly up north anymore. Up north provide more coverage, more tropical detail than they get locally. So I will take that as a compliment. And the chairman just hitting super chat. Thank you, Scott. Briller Jeopardy returns tomorrow night. Yes, with Ruben Fairchild, who, by the way, I'm really concerned, Joe. He hasn't been around for about he wasn't around at all, I think, for last week. And he's not here tonight. I'm concerned. I'm concerned. There's a silent movie festival that's going to be on Turner Classic Movies this weekend. I just want him to be part of that.
Well, who knows what Mr. Fairchild is saying about us on some other chat board?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said, who knows what Mr. Fairchild is saying about us on some other chat board?
Oh, you mean if he's slinging hash against us when he comes on here and slings hash against everybody else?
Correct.
Gotcha. All right. Oh, let me see. Let me share this. So, for those of you who are Star Trek Voyager fans, you're going to understand this reference. But let me find. Hang on, I got to find the link, which would take me just a moment.
I need to make a correction. I said that next week I actually have 2 library talks next week, Joe. One on Monday and one on Wednesday, and I have to correct that they will indeed impact our regular schedule, because both of them I see are scheduled for 7 p.m.
All right,
which means that we would have to move it over to 8:30 probably on those 2 nights. So.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so let me get this. I got this. Okay, for those of you that are on the chat board and you want to be part of the collective. There is a weather collective on Discord, conversation going on virtually all day long with all the weather folks. I just put the link up there so you can go up and join the collective and become part of the hive mind in the Unimatrix. Okay, so there's the link. It's up there. Excuse me, on the chat board. That was my dinner. I made I made zucchini parm over the weekend for the first time. Because I had a lot of zucchini and I didn't want to waste it, so I made, like you would make eggplant parm, I made a zucchini parm, and I've never made it before. So I just kind of did it off the top of my head, and I had some leftover sauce frozen in the freezer. I took that out. I added some chopped tomatoes in there, and I have to tell you, it was excellent. I had a ton left over, so that was my dinner tonight.
Well, of course, 4th of July, we had hot dogs and hamburgers and cheeseburgers on Sunday. Yesterday, Renata made shrimp scampi. Tonight, it was pepper steak. So I have been well fed these last few nights.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah, I had hot dogs. I got some boar's head hot. I love boar's head with the skin on. So when you bite into them, they crunch and they're connected. Each hot dog is connected to the next one. So right. I got some of those, and I made that. I made them along with the zucchini parm and some grilled chicken. It was very good. Yeah, Crispy, thank you. Really, it was a very kind thing for you to say. Definitely took it. It was a very nice compliment. Thank you. Joe and I, we try to do our best, and we can go as long as we want. We don't have the restrictions of producers when Ruben Fairchild isn't here. We don't have producers screaming in our ear telling us to rap. So we can go as long as we want, and we can do whatever we want in terms of putting maps up. We have the tools here to be able to do it. We have the platform to be able to do it. Just to be fair to those regular TV stations that have to deal with all the other stuff that they have to deal with, and that Joe and I dealt with for years.
Yes, for more years than we care to remember.
Yes, for more years than Anomalous Howard said, feathering clouds is evidence of weather's electric nature. Particle forcing of the electric nature is beyond what forecasters pay attention to, quote unquote, beyond my pay grade, inconsistent with enthusiasm. I like the way you put it. But really, when you look on the sat, look for that feathering signature with these tropical systems when they're in the formative stages. Or even non-tropical systems. Sometimes you see these really odd cloud formations sometimes with short waves that come in off the Pacific, and they sort of give you the idea that there's a lot going on in the upper atmosphere and that you should pay attention. And certainly that signal was sent this overnight and this morning, but certainly this morning when the visibles were out, when I started to see all that feathering going on, I was like, you know what, this thing may try to develop when it cleared the coast of Cuba, and it certainly did that. So very important to pay attention to the subtleties here. All right,
yes.
Are we done? We're done?
I think so. Yeah, there's not much more to talk about. So I guess we'll just sign off until tomorrow night.
All right. So everybody have a great night. Thanks for everybody for the super chat hits. We'll see you tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern Time. Nighty night.
Nighty night.